Today I'm going to try to draw this church, or part of a church rather, in Tbilisi, Georgia, and I'm starting at the top because where else? So the name of the game for this one, ideally, is texture. There's a lot of it, and I'm just hoping I can represent it well. So let's get into it. As I work my way down, my plan is to get the gist of everything. What I don't want is to draw the most basic silhouette and work in from there, but instead capture most of the broader shapes along my way, leaving little breadcrumbs to help me find my way back. Then I can focus more intently on specific details, shading, or, extra dimensionality or whatever. So for example, these arches, I'm not going to immediately draw the inside areas that you can see through them. I think that would complicate things to such an extent that I'd lose track. So instead, I'm simply drawing the loose shapes of the arches themselves, trying to keep perspective in mind, ignoring detail, but paying attention to the structure. So as you can see, I have included the inner portion of the arches themselves because that's more significant to me right now than, say, the deep, dark shadow directly behind them. Moving on from there, I want this entire bottom portion to be about two things. One, the perspective. This hulking shape might not seem complicated, and in the grand scheme of things, it's really not, but thinking like that is how I mess up stuff like this. So I want to keep it front of mind, and that goes for the little overgrown steps in the center, as well as these gaping openings on the side. And two, the texture. Like I said, texture is a high priority here. So not only am I going to add it in as I go, I want to imply it throughout. And that even goes for these lines that aren't, say, overgrown. These bricks make anything but perfectly straight lines. So I want to kind of subtly suggest that inconsistency everywhere I can. So you'll notice I'm not trying to make my lines razor sharp, and that's why. One more thing that didn't pop into my head immediately, but is similarly important, is the contrast and trying to evenly distribute it. My first drawing from Georgia saw me add some pitch black shadows in one area, but very little anywhere else, and that made things seem really off balance and unfinished. Here, if I'm going to fill in that top part that's completely in darkness, the one I talked about before, I want to carry that through to the bottom part that looks the same. Ultimately, I don't shade the entire scene perfectly evenly, but I was mostly focused on the primary subject here, and I can handle some inconsistency as long as each component of the drawing is at least individually consistent. Hopefully that makes sense. Also, hello. If you're new here, or even if you're not, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel if you're having a nice time. Making these videos is a labor of love, but it's also nice to know that people enjoy watching them, and subscriptions is a great way for me to see it. So if you like the video or the series in general, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. That would be awesome. Okay, so right about here is when I started to feel particularly good about where I'd taken this so far. I think the texture was really beginning to come through, and the perspective matched up a lot better than I was expecting it to. That said, I framed the reference this way because of how much I liked the surrounding foliage. This frame was interesting to me, and of course I didn't need to draw it. I could have just framed it this way for the sake of a nice reference video. But I always kind of get in my head about this stuff, so I was determined to give it a shot. Luckily, I had the foliage on the right side of the building that sort of led me down into the foreground foliage, of which there's much more in real life, hence all of it that I draw. That didn't help me with the foliage at the top, as it just juts out of the top, but that didn't slow me down. There were a few specific branches that I focused on, and I think that helped me kind of build out this area. My approach up there was draw, a few individual branches with clearly defined leaves, and then vaguely suggest the rest. I really wonder if I could just sit here and draw dozens and dozens of these branches and make it look good. I'd love to give that a try someday. I usually just want to give the implication that there's a density without having to diligently mark each and every one. But given the higher texture of the church, it might have been cool to see a similarly highly detailed bunch of branches up top. In any case, this could have gone sideways more than a few times, but I think I held on to it all the way through. I was concerned when I began drawing the foliage, especially because I was feeling so good about the church all by itself, but it worked out in the end, and I think the drawing as a whole is better for it. So what do I think of this in total? Well, on the negative side first, it's the shading. It's always the shading. I keep treating the fine liner almost like it's a pencil, but as soon as I see those clear, distinct lines as the result, I regret it entirely and wish I could start over. And maybe the building texture versus the foliage texture, I think they kind of battled for dominance and neither of them won. And specifically, I'm talking about the central overgrown area. With context, I understand what's going on there, but if I were to see this drawing in a year without the reference to fall back on, I'd probably not know exactly what I'm looking at, which is a problem, I guess. As for the positives, I think the structure of the church worked well. I like the way that turned out, and the foreground foliage as well. I think it feels separate enough to avoid the mess, and I'm happy about that. So overall, I'm pleased, but I'd love to know what you think about this one. So let me know in the comments. And if you like the video, please go ahead, like it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Anyway, I appreciate you for taking the time to watch this one, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.